absolutely just get straight to the point. So we are all about real talk. We're all about saying how it is. And we pride ourselves on, sharing advice that we have, we've either walked this path ourselves, we've supported clients through it, there's a whole range of experience that we've got between us. So this session is part of our monthly Career Club Live series, and we allow non-members to attend one session for free to see what we're all about. So if you are new to us today, welcome. And if you are already in the Career Club, let us know in the comments. Are you new? Are you already in Career Club? And what we're focusing on today is job searching over the summer, because there's so many conflicting opinions around job searching over the summer. And at the moment, the job market is feeling quite tough for lots of people. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to introduce me, and I'm also going to introduce my fabulous business partner, Jacqui, as well. We run Catalyst Careers together, and we are outplacement specialists. So we are supporting people through redundancy transitions. We are supporting with CV writing, job search strategy, interview prep, all of the good stuff that aligns with your job search. So what we're going to do first is I'll just give you a quick overview about me. So I am an ex-recruiter. I also moved out of recruitment and had a really successful career and was senior leader in my last role. So I bring all of the recruitment experience, but also some of the internal hiring manager experience, and also that ability to fast track careers as well, because that's what I did with my own. I've been writing CVs now for 20 years, and I have written thousands. I have helped people gain in excess of like £2 million worth of pay rises in total. It's probably a lot more at this point. And I absolutely love supporting people with their job searches and, looking at how they can grow their careers. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to let Jacqui, my fabulous business partner, I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then we're going to get straight into today's session. And how that's going to work is I will talk you through some of the key information, and then we'll open up for Q&A at the end. So Jacqui, let's have an overview about you.
So yeah, lovely to see so many new faces, and a huge welcome. So as Pam said, I'm her business partner, and we run Catalyst Careers together. I'm also a coach. My specialism in terms of coaching is working with leaders who are in their first 90 days. So where Pam really specialises with her one-to-one work in supporting people to find a new role, I really support people who've either been promoted or moved organisation and started a new role to really settle into that, to hit the ground and really make the impact that they want to have. In terms of my background and the outplacement work that we do together, outplacement might not be familiar jargon. We kind of forget that. And what that is essentially we support organisations to provide support when they are restructuring or people are at risk of redundancy. And that is very much around that kind of job search piece. It's around giving people the confidence to know how to look, where to look, how to structure their own job search. And in terms of my own background, I worked across a mix of operations leadership roles and also HR roles. And as part of that, I was headed up internal recruitment. So I have that understanding, I guess, from the company side of being that kind of person before the hiring manager, the person that's reviewing CVs, the person that is looking at who I'm going to put in front of people. So that's the kind of element that I really bring to the job search piece. So Pam, I will hand back over to you, and I will be keeping an eye on the chat. When Pam's finished, any time that we have left in the hour, we will make available for Q&A. And what we'll do with that is, rather than ask you to come off mute, we'll just pick the questions out from the chat. So anything that is specific to you, please do put them in the chat as we go through, and then I will quiz Pam and get her quickfire answers on those at the end.
Fabulous, thank you. So let's just get straight into it. So we're not going to sugarcoat it. The UK job market and the job market globally is really tough right now, because we're not just dealing with normal competition, we're dealing with a whole load of economic uncertainty, in the UK, particularly, we're still dealing with the Brexit aftershocks. You know, they're still rippling through industries. Companies are, you know, they're scared to hire at the moment. But some of the things that, you know, the doom scrolling through LinkedIn won't tell you is that the right people are still getting hired. And this is what I want to talk about today, and how you can really get that edge. So just before we get into like what you can do and how you can position yourself, I think it's probably quite key to cover off a few of the myths that could be really affecting your chances. So the first thing is that I'll wait until after the summer holidays, because everything starts picking up in September. Now, the reality of this is that, you know, the introduction of remote work means that you're not just competing with local people, you're competing with global people now. So, you know, what you've got to think about is, while you're waiting, someone else is applying for those roles. And also, because there's a lot less noise through the summer months, what you'll find is it's a lot easier to get in front of a hiring manager. It's a lot easier for them to get hold of your application and have the time and the headspace to read it, because, you know, probably most of the office are on holiday and all of that kind of stuff, but they're still recruiting. So I think that's really key to remember that. And thinking about, you know, the different things like the recession and, you know, all of the negative economic stuff that's going on at the moment, people are assuming that there's no opportunities out there, so there's no jobs. And you go on to LinkedIn and you scroll through, and it's like, you know, there's no jobs, candidates are getting ghosted by recruiters, you know, there's all of this bad stuff that's happening. But the reality of it is, and me and Jackie can definitely verify this, is that people are still getting recruited, people are still getting job offers, and there's nothing has changed. So when you look at it overall, and we've been doing this now a long time, yes, there's different cycles, and yes, it can feel tougher at times than others, but generally it doesn't change that much. But what does change, and what needs to change from your perspective, is how you position yourself in the job market. And if you're not getting that right, that is going to feel tough. And I guarantee, if you're not getting any traction with your job search, if you're not getting any interview invites, there's an issue with your positioning. Now, obviously, that is going to be individual. It's going to be unique to every single person. And, you know, we can look at that definitely in isolation, but for the purposes of giving you some advice and information to take away so that you can take action today, what we're going to do is look at, you know, at that positioning piece and what you need to think about, because companies are definitely still growing. They're definitely still solving problems, definitely still need good people, and they are definitely being more pickier. So the bar is higher, but actually, if you're positioned right, if you are thinking about the value that you bring and you're articulating that well, then you are going to stand out regardless. And you can forget about the applicant tracking systems and all of that stuff that people panic about in the job search. And you can focus on the value that you bring and how you get that across. And that is going to be the difference between you securing a role over the summer, in September, before Christmas, you know, whatever that looks like for you. And one final myth is that you need to lower your salary expectations because of the market, or you need to dumb down your experience in some way. So what we generally find is that people will lower their expectations, and it doesn't make them look like a better option or a better candidate. It actually makes them look like a worse candidate, because why are they not owning their value? Why are they not accepting or showing what they can do and what they can deliver? Why are they backtracking and looking, you know, at lower salary options and things like that? So it's about understanding how you position yourself in the market, what that position looks like, what that means salary wise, and what that means from a value perspective. And that is the value that you can bring to an organization, because that is going to be the difference between you getting the job offer and you not, or you getting invited to an interview, because that value is clearly articulated on your CV. So Is everyone kind of feeling this as we're going through? Let me know. Give me a few thumbs up so I can know everyone's on the same page. Amazing. Okay, so I'm going to just cover some things around why employers might be rejecting you. Thank you for all the hearts and the thumbs up. That's amazing. So some of the reasons for rejection, and I think sometimes as well, like self-awareness is quite key, but also I totally get it that it's difficult because if you're in job search mode and it's feeling tough and you're getting rejected, like there's all kinds of emotions going on. It's hitting your confidence on so many different levels. Like it's hard. Like there's no denying that. So what we just need to think about is what are the top reasons that employers are rejecting you and how can you get around this? So the first one is that it's because you're talking like everyone else. So if you've used ChatGPT to write your CV, if you are looking at job descriptions and you're just dragging out the keywords and you're trying to make it sound like you've covered all of the corporate buzzwords and all of that kind of stuff, it kind of turns into like that buzzword bingo type of thing. And what happens is everyone else is doing the same, so you start to sound exactly like everyone else, and you'll put your CV through ChatGPT and maybe you'll even add the job description and say, how can this align better? And then ChatGPT is going to do that for you. It's going to also do that for however many other people do that and put the same job description in there. So then what you'll find is that everyone starts to look and feel the same. It makes the employer's job so difficult because when you're looking at everyone, you're like, how can all of these people have the same experience? How can they all talk in the same language? How can they all sound the same? And it's easier now, believe it or not, that to stand out. You can stand out so much more easier now in this job market by writing your own CV, writing it from the heart, writing it from a value perspective. You can stand out more now, like than ever before. And it's crazy, but it's so true. And if you ask any employer, I mean, today I just had a little scroll through LinkedIn and there's a guy saying I've had 800 applications for a job. And I thought, good luck, because how you are then going to like go through and figure out, who is going to be most relevant when probably the majority of those people have used AI or something to write their CV. It just makes it so difficult. So it's so refreshing when you open a CV and it's like, oh my goodness, this person is like a real person. They're talking about the value they bring, that, they're really showing me what they can do and deliver for our organization. And it's a compelling story, and that is going to make all the difference. Now, what other people are doing is thinking, well, I need to just get it through the applicant tracking system. Like that's, the be all and end all of everything. But what they forget is the applicant tracking system is just a database. It's just storing those applications and those CVs. The applicant tracking system doesn't reject applicants, it's the human. So the CVs go into different categories within that. Then there's a human that goes in after and goes through those different categories and goes, right, okay, based on what we've asked it to match with, let's have a little look, let's see who's in here. And it's the human that does the rejecting. So don't be fooled into thinking that this applicant tracking system is super smart and can read your CV and understand what you do. You need to know that it's the human who opens that document when it's being categorized that is going to make that call. So it needs to be readable. It needs to the information that you want to provide that's going to show your value needs to jump off that page. So another thing to bear in mind with that is that employers are going to reject you if you say you're great at everything, because nobody is great at everything. So it's almost like, you kind of pick your battles and you go, right, okay, what am I moving forward with? What do I want them to know about me? How do I add the most value? Now, for some people, they will be generalists, they will have a whole range of skill sets, but I guarantee you that there's certain areas of that where they add the most value. And the way that you can figure that out is you can look at the organizations you're applying to, you can look at the marketplace they're operating in, you can look at what their competitors are doing, and you can go, right, okay, based on my experience, what is going to be most useful for them to know? And that is what you're going to lead with. And if you lead with that, that is going to show value, and that is really going to help you stand out, because nobody else is going to do that. Everybody else is going to take the job description and try and pull the keywords out and hope for the best. So if you're doing it differently, you are going to stand out. Okay. And then another thing that employers are thinking about is generally, at the moment, there's enough people out there. They don't want to babysit someone. They don't want, somebody that's going to come in with a huge learning curve, somebody that they're going to need to hold hands with. So this is your opportunity, even if it's a career change, to show the transferable skills, to show that you're capable of, plugging those gaps and doing that learning. Like, to say hit the ground running, that it's a little bit of an unfair phrase, because nobody is ever really going to hit the ground running in a role. But I think you can hit the ground running in a role in terms of getting yourself into the right position, connecting with the right stakeholders, putting the right objectives in place, getting the right learning in place. You can definitely hit the ground running with all of that stuff. So that's definitely something to bear in mind as well. And I'm sure that, we've got loads of stuff in Career Club around that, and Jacqui is our first 90 days expert once you're in that role. But companies are really keen to know that you can come in and you can start, adding value straight away, even if there's a learning curve. And one final thing around that is that you're applying to the wrong level. And this is really key, because lots of companies have become much leaner now. So they have restructured, they've cut different levels out. And what people are doing is just looking at, the job descriptions and the job titles, and they're just tailoring their CV and any job applications to the level that is that they're seeing on that job description. What you need to think about doing is looking at that company, looking at any restructures that they've done, looking at how you can go on LinkedIn and you can see who's in what position and all of that kind of stuff, and you can then start looking at, okay, how do I position myself? Because what could have been a senior manager role with two staff working underneath them now is actually now just a standard manager role, and that work is being absorbed. So all of this information that you can find will allow you to pitch yourself, so then you're not overqualified or overexperienced or underexperienced. You're pitching it at the right level, and you've done your research. So hopefully this is all making sense. Let me just see what is going on in the room. Everybody happy with everything so far? If you have got any questions as we go through, do pop them in the chat and we will get to them soon. So the next thing that we're going to look at is what actually is working in the UK job market, or just the job market generally, actually, if we look at it globally. But just because we're based in the UK, looking at the UK specifically, but all of this stuff applies, globally. So what you want to think about is what is going on in all of these markets. So not just the job market, but the market in which these companies are operating in. And this is where you are going to get your edge. This is where you are going to be able to show your real unique selling points. So the first thing is thinking about how you demonstrate crisis competence, because right now companies are going through so much. They've either been through so much and they're coming out the other side, or they're in the middle of it and it feels tough at the moment. So maybe they're restructuring, maybe they're doing a whole load of cost cutting exercises. They have been through generally challenging periods, and they might still be in those challenging periods. So what they want to see from you is that you're somebody that understands where they're at right now. That is super important. And they also want someone who doesn't fall apart when things get messy. So if you can show that you've navigated something similar, and this is all about the research that you do, so forget about just going on the company website and seeing, looking at their about page and seeing what they're all about. This is about doing some real in-depth research, and it doesn't have to take hours and hours, but it is just about understanding the place where they're operating. And then you can speak in their language. So rather than just using like generic terms or pinching words off the job descriptions, they want to know how you operate. They want to know what kind of leader you are. They want to know that they can count on you and that you're going to add value. Okay. So the key thing at the moment is showing that you are absolutely brilliant at the fundamentals, because at the moment everyone's chasing all of the sexy new skills, and they're doing all of this all of these training courses and putting it all on the CV and all of this kind of stuff. And actually what companies need are people who are really good at the fundamentals, somebody who can come in and help them with a problem that they need to solve. And some of the things, some of the courses that people are doing, there's a whole range of courses, things like AI and understanding AI, that's absolutely relevant right now. So wherever you can do that, wherever you can get upskilled on AI and how that works, and how these organizations that you're approaching, how AI is going to impact them or is already impacting them, like all of this stuff that is really current is going to be so much better than just doing random training courses or random bits of learning. There's a whole load of things that you'll get targeted by on different platforms, but what you want to be thinking about is, how do I show that I am brilliant at the fundamentals? How do I show that I'm also looking forward and learning about the stuff that matters? And then, like, finally on this point, showing your commercial awareness. So if you're doing the research, if you're looking at the marketplace that these companies are operating in, if you are showing alignment with your experience, then this is really going to demonstrate your commercial awareness. And when it comes to commercial awareness, people have loads of different views on what that looks like and how that should be articulated. But essentially, commercial awareness is just understanding how that business operates, where they operate, who their competitors are, who their customers are, and then using that information to show how you add value. And this is all of the stuff that needs to come across in your CV. And then once you get to the job interview, then this is what needs to come across in your interview answers too. Okay, so they're all of the ways that you can start really thinking about adding value. And it probably would have been really easy for me today to just go, right, okay, these are the things you need to think about putting on your CV. But we wanted to give you more than that. We wanted to kind of give you that strategic overview on what you can do to stand out in the current job market, because that is more important than anything. And this is the stuff that you're not going to get on LinkedIn. This is the stuff that, nobody's going to share this with you. Because everyone's just going to keep giving you the same generic information. Tailor your CV, use ChatGPT to get some interview questions and all of that kind of stuff. And what you need is, you need to be able to articulate your value. You need to be able to show how that value then aligns with the organizations you're applying to. So basically, if you take just some of that information, you implement that within your CV and in your interviews, you will see an increase in interview invites, and you should also see an increase in job offers as well. And if you've been bouncing about in the job market for a long time now, then this stuff is absolute gold for you, because this is going to help you to start standing out. So just thinking about the current time and it being August and everything. So as I said at the start, there's a lot less competition in the job market at the moment. Hiring managers actually have more time to think. And last August, for my one-to-one clients on Job Search Accelerator, it was a record month for job offers last August. And it was purely because people just kept consistently applying, making sure they're positioned correctly, and they kept on going with it. And even when they thought, nobody's looking, everyone's on holiday, they just carried on plugging away with it. So September budgets are being finalized at the moment. Q4 planning is definitely happening at the moment. And also things like, start dates for January and, the future, they're also being discussed now. So this is an opportunity for you to even start making connections, having conversations, and finding out what's coming up for organizations. Because even if there isn't a job right now, there might be something that you can start talking about. And I think some of the truths around the job market at the moment is that remote work has absolutely changed everything because, as I said earlier, you're not just competing with local people, you're competing globally now, depending on the organization and the skill set and everything. And the job market isn't just one market anymore. Tech is a really brutal industry to be in at the moment. You've got finance, healthcare has got a whole loads of struggles. The manufacturing industry are recruiting very cautiously. The energy sector is absolutely booming. We're finding that people are getting offered higher salaries than ever before. So I think it's really important to stop talking about the job market like it's just one thing. You can look at it and you can look at it across the different sectors and the different industries, and it is actually quite easy to move in between them once you've articulated your value and you can identify what your transferable skills are. So you don't have to just focus on one area. You can look at, what industries, what sectors will pay me more, what would be a new challenge, all of these kinds of things as well. Things like qualifications and all of that kind of stuff, they're not as important anymore. Obviously, if you're an accountant, it's going to be super important, but just generally, the results are going to matter more, and how you present those results is even more important because lots of people will bury those results in their CVs. Lots of people will go into an interview and not really be able to articulate how those results matter. Okay. And just one final point on this is networking is one of those subjects where people, as soon as you start job searching, it's like, right now I need to start networking. Hate networking. Most people hate networking. You get into this whole cycle of like, I've got to start making new friends now to get a job. And it's like, how much, how friendly do I need to be? I haven't got much time and all of this kind of stuff. So when you're thinking about networking, it's about having conversations with people that might be useful to know. And what lots of people are doing is treating like coffee chats like pitches and just going full on and just, trying to sell themselves in rather than getting to know the people. And this all links in quite nicely with personal branding and stuff like that as well. So you can build your personal brand and you can build your network alongside each other. And we've got lots of information and materials on that within the Career Club as well. And just thinking about what employers want right now, just to kind of finish us off, and then we'll move over to questions. Employers at the moment, they want someone who can deliver in uncertainty because there's no certainty moving forward. As we move forward, there's going to be more and more uncertainty. They need people that can adapt and change. And if you can show that you're that person, then you're going to help with solving their issues. They don't need somebody who needs hand holding. So, if that's you, then you can think of some of the strategies around how you can get that support so that you can perform and deliver in those roles. They want someone who gets the commercial reality of what's going on for them because budgets are tight and, companies need to get leaner. They want someone who fits in with the culture, and that's really important as well. So do your research and make sure that culture is going to be the right fit for you. And they want someone who solves problems instead of creating them because everyone is under resourced at the moment, things are tight, and they want someone who's going to come in and solve problems. So you don't necessarily need to hit the ground running, but you do need to show that you are a problem solver and how you go about doing that. And I think the bottom line here is that the job market isn't broken. It's definitely more demanding at the moment, but companies can afford to be picky. So the question isn't, how do I get any job? It's how do I become the obvious choice for the right job? And that is super important. So stop competing on desperation and start competing on competence, because this is time now for you to get out there, show your value, show them what you're made of, and stand out from all of the other candidates. And I think, right now, the people who are winning in this job market aren't the ones that are moaning on LinkedIn. you know, that they're getting ghosted by recruiters, and you know, that there's no jobs out there. They're the ones that are doing the work, figuring out the value that they bring, and they're communicating that in the way that makes the hiring managers think, finally, someone who gets it. And it's so refreshing to open that CV and to see, you know, the information clearly written around the value that you bring and what you can do for them. And that will make all of the difference for you. So I think, you know, it's time now. We'll move over to questions, but it's, I suppose what I'm saying is your job now is to understand the value that you bring, not just to find a job. Okay. So hopefully that has all been helpful information. Let us know in the comments, and let me know what questions you would like answering to. Oh, and just before we move on to questions, Jacqui's just popped a link in the chat if you would like to join us over in Career Club. It's $6.99 a month, so super bargain. Actually, there's loads of resources in there. We've got everything from like CV templates and guidance on how to do that, through to how to create your personal brand, how to negotiate your salary. We've got stuff on lead and change. Like there's a whole like loads of resources in there. There's also a support group where you can ask questions and all of that kind of stuff as well. So if you would like to join us over in Career Club, then please do feel free. So we'll move over to questions. We do have a hard finish at 2 o'clock. I know everyone's busy, so I don't want to keep anybody after that. If we don't get to all of your questions, then please feel free to join us over in Career Club, and we're happy to answer them there. So let's go to questions.
Thank you. And just to add as well, the other link that I've shared in the chat, I know some of you may well have come across us and know us from listening to our podcast, but if you are not aware of it, we have the Career and Leadership Real Talk podcast, which obviously is completely free. You can find that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. We are now also on YouTube, and the episode that I've shared in the chat is specifically around how to articulate your impact, which really just I picked out because it was picking up on that theme that Pam was just sharing around positioning yourself as the obvious candidate for the right role. And often when we're reviewing CVs, that's the element that sometimes is a bit tricky. People will say they struggle to sell themselves. They're not sure how else to write their bullet points on their CV. And that episode will be really helpful to prompt some of that thinking and help you to consider how can you really articulate to recruiters and hiring managers the value that you have the capability to bring. So we will go quick fire into these questions, and there's some amazing questions. Thank you all for the ones that you've already popped in, and we will see how many we can get through before 5 to 2 and go from there. So Pam, I love this one as a first one. I feel like I'm lighting the blue touch paper. When companies are receiving hundreds of applications, how can we get the opportunity for feedback?
Okay, so this is quite controversial, because what we always say is, you know, you don't need the feedback. So when you're asking for feedback, whether that's from a recruitment process or from an interview process, you're asking one person. They might not have any experience in providing feedback in the right way. You will get a whole load of different feedback, and then you'll start changing things up based on that feedback, and it's not always the right thing to do. So what we usually say is, you know, especially for anyone that's in Career Club, like, use us, let us, you know, have a look at your CV, let us, you know, make sure that you're positioning yourself in the right way. And if you're positioning yourself in the right way, you don't need the feedback. You just need to keep going and being consistent, because you're not going to appeal to everyone. You're not going to be everyone's first choice, but you stay true to yourself and you keep articulating the value, and you will get the job offer.
And just to add to that, I would say if you are putting in huge numbers of applications and receiving nothing back, that in itself is feedback. It says that you are not positioning yourself with your CV in the way that is cutting through. So then it's time to really look at that question of how are you showcasing yourself? How are you showing up? How are you differentiating yourself with your CV? Okay, so the next one, not so much of a question, but I think is also going to be a really common theme that some of you will identify with. So no offense to anyone, but there really are all kinds of recruiters these days. The kind of inquiries I sometimes get after applying, it's almost insulting such a person makes decisions about me. And yeah, this is really key to know that your audience is primarily that initial recruiter and then also the hiring manager. So when I was an internal recruiter, I didn't realise for a long while how unusual it was the way that I used to take a brief. I used to spend a long time with a hiring manager, really quiz them, really understand, okay, what kind of this? I would send them some LinkedIn profiles and be like, is it more like this or more like this that you want? And it took me a while to realise that is unusual. Most recruiters will take a 5-minute brief, few keywords from a hiring manager, and they will just go out there and play a numbers game. So it's hence why it's so key that those people, because they are not experts, they're normally recruiting loads of different roles, loads of different levels. They're not necessarily that senior in their own career. They're not necessarily that experienced. So you have to really make it easy for them to know that that matches what that often quite poor brief from a hiring manager might have been. Pam, next question. Should your profile section on your CV be focused on expressing your value to that job and company rather than overview of your experience? So that's
Yes.
part one. There's a secondary question that I'll add, but that's part one.
Okay, so part one. So yeah, so the profile section on your CV is the opportunity for you to articulate what you can bring. So it needs to align and it needs to show the value. So if you kind of just give an overall generic view of all of your experience, that makes it harder for them to see how you align to their role. So if you write that from the perspective of what do they really need to hear from me and see from me to know, and at this stage, it's the top of your CV, it's the first impression, and what you're essentially asking is what do they need to see in order to read on, not to offer me the job at this stage, but to read on to know that that I could be right for this role. So it's about making sure that you articulate the value that you bring that aligns to them.
Thanks. And then the tied to this, so part
Yeah.
two, are cover letters valuable? Do they get read?
So there's so much controversy over cover letters, and I am a massive fan of cover letters because the cover letter is your opportunity to show them something a little bit different. So you've got your CV document, which is always going to be quite formal, even if you've got the most compelling story on there, it's always going to be pretty formal. The cover letter then is your opportunity to kind of next level that and just be like, here's a few important things about me, things that, really align with you, things that you would need to know about me that are going to really show the value that I bring. And I think if you're writing a cover letter from that perspective, that is going to be great. If you're just doing the, dear hiring manager, I'm writing to apply for this role, then, forget it. But if you're gonna use it to show them a little bit more about what you're about, then definitely use a cover letter.
And I would add to that, I think there's also sometimes a distinction in bigger organisations. I think CVs are more relied on generally, and they're less precious about cover letters. In smaller, mid-sized organisations, I think they often want people to actually be interested in them. There's a bit of an ego stroke. If it's not a household name and their employer brand isn't huge, and you're telling them why you really want to work for them and why you're interested in this role, then there can be an ego stroke. I would say they're often also secondary. So often as a recruiter, I would read the CV first. And if from that it felt like, oh, this person is really speaking to me, then I would really love if they'd spent time to do a great cover letter. But if the CV wasn't up to scratch, the cover letter could be the best thing ever, but it wouldn't recover from a poor CV. So CV first and foremost, but absolutely, especially if you're applying to smaller or mid-sized organisations, the cover letter is your chance to really showcase, show personality and build that expectation that they're going to be interested and enjoy speaking to you. Next one, when there's an application form, is it reasonable or a waste of time to apply by copying from the CV? It's a lot of work to apply for multiple jobs by filling in unique application forms.
So I think it really depends on the application. So if you're doing like an NHS application or some kind of public sector application, then they all seem to have like slightly different requirements, and copying and pasting bullet points from your CV isn't going to be the best way to do that. So what you need to do is look at the application, look at what they're asking for, and make sure that that information, when it's transferred over, is articulating the right points. Because if you're just kind of copying and pasting it over for quickness, you're going to disadvantage yourself. You'd be better off giving it an extra 20 minutes, half an hour to construct a better answer that you can just, copy and paste in, rather than just copying the bullet points from your CV.
Thank you. Okay, yesterday I applied for a position on LinkedIn. It was through Easy Apply, looked genuine, aligned to my capabilities, submitted my CV, no cover letter function. I received acknowledgement. However, within 24 hours, I had an email to say they won't progress the application. I'm okay with that, but one, how did a human determine this in such a short space of time? Two, I've always assumed ATS also screens for keywords to assist the human. Is that a possibility?
So I absolutely love LinkedIn for recruitment, and I always recommend clients use LinkedIn for recruitment because it's probably the easiest in the back end to filter out candidates. So basically what happens is when you apply for a job, even if it's on Easy Apply, all of the applications are queued in the back end. So you can see the person's name, you can see their headline, and you've then got access to their CV document. You can click into their LinkedIn profile as well. Now, why I love LinkedIn for recruitment is because if you have got a really tight job search strategy and all of your stuff is aligned, then it makes it easier for that recruiter or hiring manager to look at your headline and go, brilliant, this person aligns. Let's have a click into their profile, see what they've got on the summary. Yeah, that aligns. Let's have a look at the CV, see what's on the CV. That aligns. And it's like super easy then to go, yeah, that took all of a couple of minutes and everything aligns and everything matches up. So you can use that to your advantage on LinkedIn. If your headline is different or you've not updated it, or it's just your job title or whatever, what you're going to do is disadvantage yourself, because basically all of your stuff is on show in the back end there. It's a little bit different on Indeed and the other job boards. In that they haven't got, the profile information about you and everything. But on LinkedIn, if you do an Easy Apply, everything needs to align. And I think because it's so easy in the back end to use, then yeah, I would say 24 hours is a really reasonable amount of time for somebody to kind of go through. Because what I tend to do if I'm working with a client on a recruitment project, I'll go through, and if there's loads of applications, I'll just reject anybody that hasn't got an align and headline. And I'll just be that harsh, because how else do you select? When you've got hundreds and hundreds of applications there, how else do you select? So the easiest way is to go, first of all, does the headline align? If it doesn't, reject it. And that person could be great because I have the most amazing CV, but they've applied on LinkedIn and it doesn't align. So that's how I work. Everybody works differently though. So this is the thing that you can't really second guess. Like, I could give you my way of working, Jackie could give you her way of working, but then all the hiring managers out there might work differently. They might target the application queue differently. It just depends. But if you've got everything aligning, if you're showing the value, you are going to increase your chances regardless.
Yeah, and just to build on that, recruiters do all work so differently. So when I was recruiting using LinkedIn Recruiter to recruit candidates, I would typically have a closing date, wait till the closing date, review all of them then. Other recruiters will literally look at them as they're coming through. People will have a minimum criteria. They might look at, if salary expectations has been shared and you don't know whether your salary is within what they're looking for. That can be a key reason. We had some roles where I worked for a company, unfortunately, against my advice, didn't used to publicly share salary bands. And we would have some roles where people would apply with salary expectations or from something like, I don't know, say 40 to 120k. So you just don't know, and you'll torture yourself if you second guess why that is happening. But there is, like Pam said, a massive value in making sure that your whole profile is aligned for roles that you use LinkedIn to apply for. Next one, a challenge I face. I have lots of transferable skills to cross industries. However, my value comes from my years of experience and knowledge in my industry combined with skill. Articulating my value to another industry feels impossible. How can you navigate this? So first of all, listen to the podcast episode that I shared the link for. And then Pam, what would be your top tips on this one?
So I think in terms of showing transferable skills, I think regardless of like any job that you're applying for, whether it's in the same industry or a different industry, the first thing you need to be really, really clear on is what you do really well and the value that you bring. And once you've got that like detailed, then you can then look at how that transfers across other industries. And if you are looking at moving across industries, then what you'll also need to be aware of is what your limitations are, where your gaps are, and you're not just thinking about how those skills transfer, you're thinking about how those skills transfer, but also how you're going to plug the gaps, how you're going to do the learning, how you're going to catch up and get up to speed as well. So that's where lots of people fall down, especially when you get to an interview for a job that's, outside of your industry. It's all right talking about the transferable skills, but what they'll also be thinking of is, well, that's fine because, yeah, some of those skills are transferable, but how are you going to come over to our industry and over to this role? And how are you going to, get started? How are you going to move forward? And in order to do that, you need to just show how you will plug those gaps as well.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the time. We've got about 7 minutes left before we start to wrap up. We aren't going to get to all of the questions. There are some amazing questions there. What I would say is if you go to the YouTube channel and subscribe, you'll be able to see all of the back catalogue. And a number of these will have been covered in different podcast episodes that we've already done. And obviously, if you do come into Career Club, then you'll have chance and have access to us to ask any questions that we don't get to. So yeah, really appreciate all the engagement and contribution and asking those. So apologies, we won't get to them all, but we do have to stick to time. So Pam, what can you do if you've spent more than, it doesn't say how many years, but I'm guessing a fair few, self-employed as a business development specialist? The experience doesn't seem to be valued by recruitment consultants.
So this is probably one of my favorite questions because this comes up so much and it's such an easy thing to fix. So recruiters will struggle with people that have been self-employed because they want to sell in the perfect candidate. And even if you've got the perfect experience from what you've been doing, what you will present as somebody who is now moving away from their own business or moving away from the flexibility and freedom of being a freelancer into a permanent role. And there'll be questions and doubts around why you're doing that. So the way that you need to position your experience is not as a consultant, but as a specialist in that area. So you need to show them going to come in and all of the reasons why you now want a permanent role are really clear and you've got that story really straight, because otherwise recruiters will just look at it like, well, what is going on with your business? Why are you now looking for a permanent role? Why don't you stay freelancing? Will you stay if you've been a freelancer or a consultant for a long period of time? How will you feel in a permanent role? These are all of the objections that you need to handle upfront with the recruiter and also possibly with the hiring manager as well.
Thank you. Next one. Leadership roles aren't always posted from what I can see. Is it worth messaging the company direct saying if there's a position available now or in the future, I wish to be considered?
So yeah, with leadership positions, usually, the majority of leadership positions are going to be filled through networks, through, having conversations, through people, putting themselves out there, building a personal brand and all the rest of it. So the best way to find out about those roles, if they're not advertised, is to start building your network, start putting yourself out there, asking the questions. And I think the key thing is, just sending somebody a message and saying, have you got any leadership positions, or, have you got any, say, for example, it's like a finance director role, will you be looking for a finance director in the next 6 months? It's like, that's a message that's going to get ignored. If you send them a message and you're like, right, okay, I'm a mergers and acquisition specialist. I've done all of these cost saving activities. Are any of these things useful for you? Is it worth having a chat? That is going to be a completely different conversation and get a completely different response to just asking, have you got any, finance director positions available?
Thank you. The next one, is it valuable to follow up with recruiters to look good?
So with recruiters, it really depends on the recruiter. So what I used to do when I was a recruiter is I used to say to my candidates, look, my priority, I am targeted on business development calls. So I am targeted on making like 100 plus business development calls a day, and that is tough. So then you've got candidates phoning in the office, you've got candidates emailing, and your priority as a recruiter is to develop business, because if you've got no jobs on, you've got nothing to talk to those candidates about. So what I used to say to my candidates is, I want you to send me an email each week, same time each week. I used to say, send me an email, 5 o'clock every Thursday, so that I know exactly that, what you're looking for. So even though you think you might have had loads of conversations, you've sent them the same emails, you can just do a copy and paste each week and say, just to let you know, I'm still available. This is the job title. This is the salary. These are the locations I can work in. Please let me know if there's anything coming up, or if we can chat further. And I would ask them to send me that update every single Thursday, and I basically have like an Excel sheet on my desk, and I'd be ticking off the people that are still available, because then when I'm on calls with my clients, I can then look at that sheet and go, right, okay, I know these people are still available. There is nothing worse as a recruiter than specking someone in, and specking someone in is talking about a candidate to a client and then calling that candidate to say, I've got you an interview, and they're like, oh, well, I've got a job 2 weeks ago. So there's nothing worse than that. So if you keep the recruiters updated, they might not always email you back. You can do it on LinkedIn as well. But just keeping that consistency going with the update means that they know that you're still available and they can still talk to clients about you. And that really makes all the difference. And what you'll find is you'll build a better relationship with the recruiters, and you'll be front of mind as well.
Fab. And then the last one that we're going to have a chance to answer is from Natalie. I just want to pick up though, because the next comment was around, sorry, that makes no sense. Feedback's essential for anyone to be able to reshape their CV and reposition themselves in the market. So it's not that we're saying that there's no value in feedback. What we're saying is feedback from a job that you've already been rejected for will only tell you how to have had a better chance to get the job you already haven't got. So Pam and I give feedback on a regular basis to our Career Club members to help them to consider how they're articulating their impact, are there things that they could do better. You will find it incredibly difficult to get feedback on a CV application. And certainly if you've gone to interview, very often the feedback is as generic.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I disagree with this totally. I totally disagree with it.
That's cool, but we're
totally
going to move on. So
because no one can build any kind of changes within their
fine,
approach.
but we are going to move on because we have 1 minute left.
It's a laziness of recruiters. It's a laziness of recruiters.
So Natalie's question was, I'm a specialist and there aren't many roles in my niche. While I'm looking for the right niche role to come up, how do I balance my LinkedIn profile so that I can do something more generic, e.g. delivery roles or project management in the meantime to keep me ticking over?
Right, okay, that's a great question to finish on as well, because that is something that comes up for people. So when you're looking for lots of different roles, it can be quite difficult to then think, well, what do I focus on? So I think the key thing is making sure that you cover off your core experience, and then you can also include, that you've also got expertise in these areas as well. So that if a recruiter or a hiring manager is reading your application, especially if you've applied on LinkedIn, they can see the alignment, because there's nothing worse. And I'll just give you a quick example of, I was doing some recruitment for a sales manager role, and there was somebody that had applied and their job title was project manager and their CV was very project manager focused, that application was rejected. She got in touch, we had a conversation, and it turned out that that's exactly what she was doing. She was just trying to look for different roles because she'd been out of work for a while. So the advice there was, you know, you need, if you're going to look at different roles, then you need to incorporate that, but then you just need to think about, are you then diluting the key information and is it impacting? And if you are making lots of applications and you're not really getting anywhere, then that could be the case. But obviously, you know, you can always link in with people like me and Jackie to get, you know, some honest advice around, you know, how you can do that better. So I would say, you know, that's the first place to start.
Fab. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us. It's been great to have you with us. It's been a really fast-paced session. We've covered a lot of ground. Having registered for this session, so this will be uploaded as a private link to our YouTube channel. So we will share that link so that you can go back to the recording if there's other stuff that you kind of didn't manage to capture notes on and want to go back to. Be great to see some of you in Career Club. And likewise, if there are topics that you would like us to cover on the podcast that we haven't yet covered when you've had a look at that, then do drop us a message, because we, again, love recording episodes that are in response to the questions that we know clients and potential clients have got. So thank you all so much. It's been great to have you with us, and we'll see some of you again soon.
Bye, everyone.